If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram at @fitnessmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. You're going to love this episode today where I chat with Jodie. Jodie shares her story about becoming pregnant with twins. She does discuss her miscarriage, followed by a surprise twin pregnancy. But it's a beautiful, positive story where Jodie overcomes a lot of, obstacles and challenges. She talks us through her decision to having an induction and a vaginal birth. She talks us through the challenges that pregnancy with twins has. And she talks us through her breastfeeding journey too, and how she handles feeding twins 24/7. So trust you're going to love this beautiful episode. Whether or not you're having twins or but a normal birth, whether or not you're choosing to have a vaginal or a cesarean birth, I trust you're going to get some beautiful value out of listening to Jodie's story today. As I do mention, Jodie is a dear friend, and Jodie has shared her previous birth with us. Little Harry, who is a few years old now, was diagnosed with a congenital diaphragmatic hernia during the pregnancy. So I will link that story in the show notes if you'd like to listen to Jodie's previous story. But otherwise, let's get straight into it. Before I do, thank you so much for everyone and anyone who has shared this podcast with a friend. If you know someone who is pregnant or who has recently had a baby, thank you again for sharing this podcast, because it really is the best way to help this podcast to reach more people and to help more people who are going through the same journey as yourself. Right, let's dive into this beautiful episode with Jodie. Jodie, thank you so much for joining me on the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Second episode that we've done together, and you're back. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So as I mentioned in the intro, we recorded an amazing episode with Jodie's first pregnancy and birth, and full disclosure, Jodie is a really dear friend of mine. And she's been a member of Fitness Mama for a few years now, but Jodie just has another story to share. So Jodie, you've just had beautiful twin boys 4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
How's the ride been?
Yeah, it's all a bit of a blur. I can't believe it's been 4 weeks. Yeah, so they'll be a month old tomorrow, actually. So yeah, crazy ride. We as you know, we had Harry almost 3 years ago now, and thought, will we go again? Will we not? And we decided to go again. And then we found out, big surprise, that we were having twins, identical twin boys. It was all a bit of a shock. And then, we had a bit of a rough start again to the pregnancy. This time there was a bit of a growth difference in the twins initially. So that meant we sort of had a lot of monitoring and checks and scans and things throughout, but we've been so lucky again. Touch wood, we've had some healthy baby boys, and everyone's safe and well. So.
Amazing. So let's rewind. Let's take it right back. Now, the journey to becoming pregnant. Can you talk us through when you were, did you come a time with Harry when he was a certain age that you just thought, yep, time to go again?
Yeah, I think when he sort of was ready, when he was about to turn 2, I think was a time when people who have had children similar ages are all sort of having their second, and it was about that time, I was also looking ahead. I turned 40 in May, and I was thinking, I've got to kind of get a move on if I want to sort of do things before. In my head, I just had 40 in there as some sort of milestone that I wanted to hopefully fall pregnant before then. So, yeah, around that time, and then we started sort of trying. And as you know, I had a miscarriage last year at about 7 weeks. So that was a bit of a hiccup. And then found out as part of that process that I had a fibroid in my uterus. So the plan was I was going to have keyhole surgery to have that removed. And 2 days before the surgery, I realised that I'd skipped a period. So I did a pregnancy test, and lo and behold, I was pregnant. So we paused the surgery and just crossed our fingers and toes, I guess, that this pregnancy went well, which it did. So, yeah, it was a bit of a strange process.
And why were you going to have that fibroid surgery at that stage? Was that impacting your chance of becoming pregnant?
Yeah, so I went to an obstetrician here in Ballarat when I had the miscarriage. So when I was pregnant at that time, I went to the OB here, and then when we found out that I had the miscarriage, he did say, look, he would recommend getting the fibroid out. It was my choice, obviously, but he said it is probably hampering both my chance in falling pregnant and then also keeping the baby if I did fall pregnant. So we sort of, given that I was turning 40, I didn't have a heap of, I guess, time on my side to just, could keep trying and see how you go. The odds weren't strong that I would fall pregnant again and keep it, but we decided we'd just go with the surgery, get it done. That would mean you'd sort of need, 4 months or so where you'd need to stop trying, but we thought that was, the best option for us. So,
and I remember that being quite a big deliberation for you. It's like, if we have this surgery, then it increases our chances of becoming pregnant, but we have to wait 4 months. Is that right?
Exactly right. So they say, I think it was about after you have the surgery, you have to wait 3 months before you start trying again. And then obviously, you're back to square one in terms of you never know how long the process is going to take from there. So, it was a really big decision. But we just thought, look, in the long run, I'm better to have the surgery and, see how we go.
And you were making all these decisions was it quite soon after your miscarriage?
Yes. Yeah, that was pretty much immediate. Yeah, as soon as that happened, yeah.
How were you feeling during that stage?
I was pretty devastated. Obviously, heart goes out to anyone that goes through miscarriage, no matter what stage. It was a bit I was personally devastated, but I knew that I needed to, get back on the horse, so to speak, and try to do something to give myself the best chance to fall pregnant again. So I was pretty keen to get things moving.
So talk us through 2 days before you're due to go in for the surgery for the fibroid.
Yes.
And you just suddenly think, I might be pregnant. Is that what happened?
Yeah, pretty much. I just thought, I'll just do a pregnancy test just in case. I was all ready to go into surgery. And then when I actually saw that the test was positive, I was actually really worried. Like, I was really stressed because I thought, oh gosh, I knew that the chances of me keeping the baby weren't high. So I rang the obstetrician and said, you wouldn't believe it, I've just done a pregnancy test and it's positive. And I was really worried. I said, oh no, I don't know what to do. And he said, this is great. Don't worry about it. Just let it go. We just hope that, like, half the battle was falling pregnant. That's now happened. So excellent news. Let's just, go with the process and trust in it and just try not to stress yourself out, and hopefully all will go well. And thankfully it all did in the end.
Okay, so that was 2 days before the surgery was booked. And then how long did it take for you to find out that you were pregnant with twins?
This episode is brought to you by Baby Bee, Australian-owned and designed prams combining quality, safety and style. Not only does Baby Bee let you try their prams at home with free returns for 9 months, yes, that's 9 months, they also offer an industry-leading 3-year warranty for total peace of mind. With thousands of 5-star reviews, around-the-clock customer care, and up to $300 of free accessories with every pram, what are you waiting for? Go visit www.babybeeonline.com and check them out for yourself. And yes, for listeners of the podcast, there is a 20% discount code. Enter FITBEE, FITBEE 20 at checkout, and T's and C's apply.
Oh, yes. So the first scan I had was actually, so I had that obstetrician. It was pretty early on. I can't remember. It was under 6 weeks. And the obstetrician actually said there's only one baby, all healthy, everything's fine. So we thought there was only one initially. And then I think it was around the 6 week, no, maybe that one was 6 weeks. And then I think at 10 weeks, I had a bleed again out with Kath actually and another girlfriend for breakfast in Melbourne. And I had some bleeding with Harry, my firstborn, which turned out fine. But then I also had bleeding before my miscarriage. And then this time again at 10 weeks, I had a bleed and I was devastated. I definitely thought that I'd lost the baby. So I was due to have a checkup with the obstetrician, I think the following day anyway. So I actually went in. That was a pretty rough 24 hours. I thought, back to the drawing board. But went into the obstetrician for that 10-week scan, pretty much thinking, okay, this is, there's no baby there anymore. And then I didn't actually have my husband with me for that scan, so I was solo. And at that scan, the obstetrician said, look, everything's fine, which is great. And he was really embarrassed because he realised there was actually 2 babies in there. So that was a really big shock.
And why was he embarrassed?
I think he was a lovely guy, this obstetrician. He ended up deferring me to a different one, which is another story. But, he, I think, was just embarrassed that he'd told me at that first scan that there was only one baby. Yeah, and he knew our backstory, having gone through, the fibroid situation, the miscarriage. So I think he thought, 2 is going to be a bit of a handful. But, yeah, I think he's just embarrassed that he missed it the first time.
So you were by yourself. You get told you don't have one baby, you've got 2 babies. You thought you were about to be told you're having miscarriage and then you find out you've got 2 babies. Talk us through what was happening in your brain.
I was just in a complete world of shock. Obviously, I was happy that I hadn't had a miscarriage, so that was a bit of relief, but then absolute shock. And for some reason, I like to think about what my partner would think. So I was pretty keen to get home and tell him. But, I was just the whole drive home, I was just thinking, oh, my gosh, I don't know how we're going to do this. And then, when I got home, I said, sit down to my husband and get ready for some news. And I think he was bracing like me for the fact that, we'd had another miscarriage and he couldn't believe it. And his first comments were, we need a bigger car to carry everyone around. He was just thinking logistics. But, we were both in a bit of shock thinking, how on earth are we going to manage this?
And when you were thinking, how are we going to manage this, what in particular were you thinking about? One particular thing that in hindsight sounds ridiculous, but was there one?
I think it's just, when you have a baby and everything's a blur for the first, few months and you just have little flashbacks. I remember a few nights where I couldn't settle Harry and you're just at your wit's end, you've checked everything, he's not settling, and in the middle of the night you're really frustrated. And I would have flashbacks to those moments and think, that was hard enough with one. Imagine that with 2 and the other baby's screaming. Like, how am I going to cope in that situation? How's my husband going to cope if it's him alone in that situation? Just thinking about those moments that were stressful with Harry and then thinking, oh my gosh, multiply that by 2. Yeah, that was probably the biggest sort of alarm bell going off in my head.
Yeah. So Grant's worried about the car.
Yeah. Yeah, logistics. Yep.
Did it take long for you to like share the news with your family and like, or did you need processing time?
No, we actually, as it happened, the following day, from when we found out, I think we found out it was a Friday, I think. And then the following day we had a family friend's wedding. So we actually told my parents and brother at the wedding, and we thought we better jump on the phone to Grant's parents and tell them as well, because we're very close to both families, and they'd been here supporting throughout the whole process when I'd had the miscarriage, and then they were sort of aware of what was going on. So we'd told them that we were pregnant early on, but the update was, that all of a sudden there's now going to be 2 babies. So they were all as shocked as we were.
Yeah. So how is pregnancy different with a twin pregnancy?
To be honest, the first part of it wasn't that different for me. I was so lucky that I didn't actually get sick. I didn't get any morning sickness or anything like that, which I didn't get with Harry either. So that was pretty similar for me. It was only the fact at 20 weeks that the obstetrician that I was seeing rang and said with the scans, because I was having more regular scans, that was the big difference at that point. He said one of the scans had turned up a bit of a growth difference in the twins, and it was high enough that he was concerned that there could be a bit of twin-to-twin transfusion happening. So that's when sort of he said, I think you're better to be seeing this specialist obstetrician in Melbourne, and they'll be able to take care of you better than we can. You'll have more weekly scans, more possibly even more regular than that towards the end. And you can have the baby where there's, the babies, where there's a NICU and special care sort of ready, which might not have been the case down here in Ballarat. So, yeah, in terms of physically, probably not much difference. It was just knowing that more regular scans and check-ins and so forth.
Can you talk us through that growth difference you mentioned? What would have happened if there'd been a big difference in the baby sizes?
Yeah, so as far as I understood it, the way it was explained to me, at that point in time at 20 weeks, there was a 19% growth difference in my twins. So, the little one was about 19% behind in growth. But that's when the way the obstetricians both explained that to me is that anything over 20% is classed as this twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, and that's when they're concerned about the outcome of the pregnancy. So there's 3 different types of twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, and they can sort of tell which one you have depending on the growth difference, but also the way the blood was flowing through the umbilical cord. So that was what they were checking very regularly. But I was very lucky that even though there was that initial growth difference, there was the blood was flowing in the positive way that it should have been. So things were looking better than they could have been in that scenario. And then as it happened from 20 weeks through to when I had them at 36 weeks, the little twin actually caught up in growth. So by the end, there was only about 3% difference. And it did fluctuate every week. Those weekly check-ins where I was going to Melbourne for the scans was kind of like, oh, what are we going to have today? And sometimes it was closer to, up towards 20, and other days it was down towards 10. So, it did fluctuate a bit, but that's what we were checking every week.
That would have been, well, from what I imagine, that would have been a bit stressful, was it?
Yeah, it was stressful, just particularly those days when you just think, gosh, where you hear that it might be on the higher side, that, that the days it was 19%. And initially when it was like, okay, here's the call, you've got to go to Melbourne, you've got to be transferred to this obstetrician. She's really busy, but she's cleared her books to see you, because you're thinking, oh gosh, this sounds serious. This doesn't sound good. And I'm very aware for a lot of, this obstetrician that I went to, Innie, she's amazing at St Vincent's, but she had a lot of similar patients, but they aren't so lucky that their journey's the other way. They don't start with a big growth difference and then potentially towards the end that's the syndrome is, greater than it was at the start. But I, had a really lucky case where mine went the right way. So, it was just a watch and see, but I was I was very positive from her weekly scans that things were going the right way. And she was sort of instilling that in me. Look, this is a much better scenario than when you initially came to us. So things are traveling in the right direction. Let's just hope they stay the same.
Yeah, brilliant. So let's take you to around 30 weeks pregnancy in the last trimester. What did you feel like your choices were when it came to birth? Like, was it at this stage they started talking you through the options available for you?
Yeah, that's actually probably the biggest surprise that I had along the way. I just assumed, and when I was seeing the original obstetrician in Ballarat here, we both just assumed, my husband and I, that we would have to have a cesarean birth with twins. That was just, I thought par for the course. And certainly down here in Ballarat, I think that's the direction that things would have gone. But when I went to see the obstetrician in Melbourne and things started, towards that 30-week mark, things were looking positive in terms of not as big a growth difference as we thought. I was tracking along pretty well in terms of my health, and everything else was on track. So I'd already had a vaginal birth with Harry, and the obstetrician, Innie, said to me, look, you're a really good candidate for a vaginal birth for these twins. And I was quite shocked, thinking, I just had my head around that it would be a Caesar. And she said, well, it doesn't have to be. So yeah, I was a bit, as you know, Kath, I was a bit nervous about that, because I had just, I don't know, for some reason in my head thought, I'm not going to have a vaginal birth again. So I just needed to get my head around it more than anything. And then as we got closer to, once we ticked over the 32-week mark, we'd booked in for a vaginal birth induction. And that's how we went.
So talk us through what you were thinking, because no doubt, were you thinking about the pros and cons of each? How did you come to your conclusion?
So I think the biggest thing for me, because the birth that I had with Harry was quite smooth. I was pretty lucky. I had a pretty smooth birth with him. But in my head, I was just thinking, I haven't prepared for this one as much. I am a bit older. I haven't been exercising as much as I was with my firstborn. Am I going to be physically as strong? There's two babies. Am I going to be pushing for twice as long? And this is going to be twice as taxing on me physically. That was what I was trying to get my head around, I guess. But then also was thinking with Harry, because he was in special care for, he was in the Royal Children's for 3 weeks. So I did need to be up and on my feet, and it helped not having had gone through the cesarean recovery. I literally just jumped onto my feet after the birth and went down to be by his bedside. And I thought, I don't know what's going to happen here with the twins, how long they might need to be in a special care nursery. So it would be great to be as mobile as I could be, I guess, after this birth, to try and, handle everything that was coming afterwards.
And so that was probably was that the biggest point with your decision making? Yeah.
And I think also, I was pretty easygoing in terms of I was happy to take Innie's direction. She was the professional. She, had seen this, and she was very adamant that I was a really good candidate for a vaginal birth with the twins. So I trusted in her and thought, I can do this. I would like to be, as mobile as I can be afterwards. So just trust in her and go with it.
Yeah. And talk us through the induction side of it. Is that something she recommended, or did you have any options around there? No, Innie recommended it. She said once we get to 36 weeks, that was when they usually induce twins. And I think when I had the final scan, they were actually, because they were only 3% difference, the guy that was doing the scan said, you could actually probably go a bit longer. Your obstetrician might give you the option to go another week. But, having said that I was fine, physically fine all pregnancy, those last couple of weeks, they were full on trying to carry the twins. It was very heavy. I could feel, low kicking. It wasn't comfortable at all, getting lots of indigestion and just was finding it hard to sleep. I did have a bit of a cold those last couple of weeks as well. So it was all just, it was a bit taxing those last few weeks. And I thought,
no, I think I'm ready to, if they're healthy at 36 weeks, then let's go now. Cause my body was definitely over carrying them.
Yeah. Talk us through the morning of the induction.
Yeah, gosh. For starters, that last few days, I just remember thinking, oh gosh, just hang in there, please hang in there. Like I just wanted to make it to the induction day because I knew that Innie had it all planned out. Everyone was going to be in the room at that time. It was all going to be hopefully according to plan. So we were asked to come in at 6:30 in the morning. I didn't have to go in the night before because when I had a vaginal exam on the Friday, so I was booked to be induced on the Monday, had a vaginal exam on the Friday, and I was already 3 centimetres dilated. So I didn't need to go in and have any gel or anything like that. So they said, come back on Monday morning at 6:30, ready to go. So I did that, went into the delivery suite, and they pretty much gave me, first thing was get ready and have the early epidural, which I did, and that all went well. And then
was that the first thing you had when you went in there?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think so. I think it was between that and the, I think that was the first thing. And then it was, hooked up to the oxytocin and get things moving.
And talk us through that epidural. Was that another choice? Like, had you consciously wanted that as part of your plan?
I did want that as part of my plan, but because I did have one with Harry, but I do think that it would have been decided for me anyway, because with my twins, so the twin A, the bigger one, was down low head first. He was ready to go. But twin B, up until the induction day, he was actually feet down. So they said the obstetrician would basically have to reach up and pull him down by the feet once the first twin was out. And that's why they were giving me the epidural, because they needed it for that process. I wasn't looking forward to that part. But as it happened, we didn't need to do that, because once twin A came out, twin B did a little somersault into the space and he came out head first too.
Oh, amazing. So you went in at 6:30. What time did you have the epidural? What happened after that?
Good question. I wish I'd paid more attention to the timings, but I think it was a couple of hours probably by the time we sort of set things up and ready to go, probably around 8:30, I imagine it was. And then, we just had, hooked up to the oxytocin. And then I think we'd planned on, Innie said, if you could have these babies around sort of 1:30, that'd be amazing, around lunchtime.
Why?
So I don't know, must have fitted in with her schedule, but that was sort of the joke, that was the plan. But then, it was sort of a bit of a blur. I just remember being quite sleepy actually, which was bizarre. Just sort of, I was quite calm, and I don't know whether it was, I don't know what was happening with, the drip and what it was, the effect it had on me, but I just remember being quite sleepy. And then, so they broke the waters, and I think officially they said my labour before the first twin came was an hour and a half. So it wasn't long at all. And it was pretty smooth actually.
And were you confined to the bed?
Yes, I was. Yeah. I did have a lot of the monitoring on me, and then they had put a little, what do you call it, tape on Lenny's head, on the first twin's head. Yeah. So just to monitor him. So they'd put that cap on his head as well, so they could tell what was happening and had to sort of stay on the bed.
Yeah. Was that more monitoring than you'd had with Harry?
Other than the cap on the bigger twin's head, I think, everything would have been the same. Yeah.
Because they also wanted to monitor Harry too. So for those listening, Harry had correct me if I'm wrong, Jodie, but a congenital diaphragmatic hernia. So they needed to get him off to theatre pretty quickly. So, right?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So you were lying down, you're feeling sleepy. Did you feel an urge to push with the epidural?
Yeah. So I actually felt no pain. It was a lot of pressure. but I wouldn't say pain. So that was great. And then I did start to feel, I didn't actually feel the urge to push. It was probably just before about midday, I think it was, one of the midwives she was constantly checking, obviously, the twin who had the little cap on their scalp, and his blood pressure actually started to get a little bit high. So she called the obstetrician and to come in and do a vaginal exam, and they did that, and that's when the obstetrician pretty quickly said, look, you're fully dilated actually, so let's just start pushing now. So that all happened really quickly. My partner was actually going out to get some fresh air and a sandwich, so he nearly missed it. But yeah, they pretty much just said, quick, call your husband, and shoved the phone in my face. And I said, you better get back here quick. And then they said, right, start pushing. As soon as I hung up the phone, he walked in and I was pushing. So he was like, what's going on?
Oh my gosh. So Jodie, did you have any gel or Syntocin or anything like that? So they just broke your waters?
Yeah, so they broke the waters early on. Yeah, I didn't have gel. I just had the oxytocin.
Oh, you did have oxytocin. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so did they had to coach you with the pushing? They were telling you when to push, or could you feel it at that stage?
Yes, but no. They told me, they said when there's a contraction at the end, well, basically when you start feeling the tightening, because I could definitely feel the tightening and the pressure. They said at the start of the next contraction, when you feel that tightening, big breath in and then push. And it all came back to me sort of having been through with Harry, okay, yep, pushing. And I think I spent a lot of time pushing with Harry, but nowhere near as long this time. So it was pretty quick. It was actually only a few pushes, and the first twin was out. And then, they popped him up on my chest. And I was just, crying, looking at this little guy on my chest here. And meanwhile, a couple more pushes and the second little guy came out.
So you were pushing with a baby on your chest?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And there was actually, they had planned to have a second obstetrician in the room, which I think is normal procedure with twins, as I understand it. But he didn't actually make it in because it all happened so quickly. He didn't even make it in time for the first twin to pop out. So he sort of entered the room. There was a lot of people in the room, and he sort of entered halfway between, and there was only 5 minutes between the twins. So it was all, a bit rushed, but smooth.
Now, I think we forgot to mention at the start, identical?
Yes, sorry.
Twin boys?
Identical. Yep, so identical, one placenta but separate sacs. So identical, and boys.
Amazing. So you got these two identical babies on your chest.
Yes, although they didn't look very identical when they came out. They so the bigger one had a very pale complexion, and the smaller one had a very red complexion. So the medical team think that there probably was a bit of transfusion that happened either during the labour or really late in that pregnancy, where the distribution of oxygen wasn't quite equal. But the twins didn't have to go to special care or anything like that, and they both had a touch of jaundice, but the paediatrician was confident that that would even out over time, and there was sort of not too much to worry about in terms of one being really pale and one being really red. So they still don't, to me, look that identical, but they are.
How did you feel when you had two babies on your chest at that, just after that?
Yeah, just surreal, so surreal. Yeah, just immediately that sense of, I can't believe they're here. They're out. They're here. Amazed, but just crazy, and just crazy how that whole process. You think, how have I carried these little guys around for 9 months? It's just amazing what the human body can do. So it was all a bit surreal.
And what was Grant doing at this stage?
I think he was thinking the same thing. It was kind of like an out-of-body experience, looking at these two little kids and little bubbers and going, wow, they're ours now. Two more little munchkins to look after. But he was just in a state of shock, I think, as well.
And talk us through, like after that at what stage did you start to try feeding them?
Yeah, so immediately, I mean, I was a bit distracted because I had always at least one twin, like they were taking one and doing their checks while I had the other and swapping over. So that was good because it was sort of a distraction. I was sort of unaware of what else was going on to my body, but that was probably the only bit that was painful in some description. The midwives were trying to massage like my stomach, and it was quite tender at that point. There was quite a bit of pressure, and I think that was probably partly due to the fibroid, which had, with the blood flow, had expanded. So it did feel like a bit of a tennis ball for a while, for a couple of days. So yeah, they were trying to massage that sort of straight after the birth while I was distracted. But yeah, that was the only thing that we sort of that happened in the delivery room once all the twins were checked. And yeah, it was sort of very calm from that point. They just went to the little cribs, and yeah, I went and had my shower, and then we sort of waited for our room, and off we went. So it was all very different to when I had Harry, and he scooted straight off and the room was empty. But yeah, it was all very orderly.
So the first breastfeed with them, was it both at the same time or one at a time?
I don't actually remember trying to breastfeed in that delivery suite. I think it actually wasn't for a little while. I think it was probably later that night when we got back to our room that the nurses said, would you like to try and help get them on the breast? I did have one of the amazing Twin Z pillows handed down to me from a twin mum friend. So I tried to sort of, sit on the bed and tandem feed them. But that was a bit tricky. Initially, the advice I had from the medical team was try and just do one at a time to get the master that first before you try and, tandem feed both, which can be a bit tricky to get them to latch on properly. So yeah, I think we just tried to do, one at a time from there. And to be honest, we had mixed results. The smaller twin was actually really strong and pretty, he was okay at the breast, but the bigger one, he didn't really show a lot of interest. So yeah, and I had to wait probably, I think it was about 3 days till my milk came in anyway. So yeah, we started giving them formula from then, and we're doing a bit of mixed at the moment. I'm pumping a lot and trying to give them a mixture of express breast milk and formula.
So talk us, and I do want to go back to those early days, but talk us through that. How do you, like I know with one, to breastfeed, change nappies, pop them to sleep, express, like that takes long enough. How does the day look with two sets of breastfeeding and expressing and feeding?
Yeah. We're still trying to work that out, to be honest. I'm sure it'll change a few times, but we've been lucky. My husband's been on paternity leave. He actually goes back to work this week, but he's been working sort of 2 days a week. And then I've had either my parents or his parents here to support during those couple of days at least. So I've always kind of had a second pair of hands around, apart from, a couple of days here and there. So that's been a huge help because I have been able to kind of pass someone one twin in a bottle while I do the second twin, either at the same time, and then I can sort of pump at the same time as feeding one, or I can pump after when I've sort of settled them down. But yeah, we started initially trying to keep them on the same schedule. So we heard that was the way to go, because as soon as they're out of sync, then we spend all day, feeding and trying to keep up with each of them on different schedules. But the last couple of days, we've actually just let them sort of dictate their own terms and not necessarily wake up the second one when the first one wakes up for a feed. And that's been okay when there's two people, because you can basically just tag one baby each. And it means, my twin the other night when I had the smaller twin and he actually slept through 8 hours. So I picked the winner there and my husband was over 3 hours with the other one. And then we swapped, and then again, mine slept for 6 hours. So perfect. But yeah, that's been, we're trialing that at the moment, but there we go.
And can you talk us through Like, at what stage did you decide, like, was it a given from the start that you would introduce formula, like, right from the start, or what was the process behind that? Can you just talk us through what was happening there?
Yeah. So originally, because with Harry, I had trouble getting him on the breast, and I ended up expressing for 11 months, and he had mixed with formula, but probably mostly expressed breast milk. And I pumped for 11 months, and everyone had said to me, how on earth did you do that? That's really taxing on you. And it was, but I didn't know any difference. So it was fine for me. But I thought, I don't think I'd be able to do that with twins. I think I won't, I'll have a toddler as well around, what if I'm trying to feed two babies, pump and take care of the toddler? I just can't see that happening. So I had hoped that both twins would just breastfeed, and then I'd be able to do that while I was sort of, maybe either tandem down the track, or, trying one-on-one while my husband was still here on leave, able to help. But I think that initially when my milk hadn't come in yet, they obviously had to be fed. So that was formula, and that was fine. That was sort of the only option. And then as my milk came in, I was trying them on the breast with the help of the midwives in hospital. But I was finding that it was so hard to tell how much they were getting. I was giving them a fair bit of time on the breast. They were sort of on and off, but then they'd still drink a whole bottle of formula anyway. So I didn't think they're actually getting that much from me. So, to get them fed, and particularly when they wake up, screaming and hungry, it was just give them the bottle straight away, quick, just give them some sort of milk. So I found at the moment, I did see a lactation consultant a couple of weeks ago, and she suggested trying the nipple shields because they're obviously fine with the bottle. And that definitely makes a difference, I think, especially with the little one, Ted. He's quite good with the nipple shield. I just need to try and get him on the breast a bit more, give him more opportunities, I guess, at the moment, in between all the expressing and bottle feeds, just to try and keep up my supply. And hopefully breastfeeding will be an option if at some point, we just need to try and feed him.
Mm. And what was...
Yeah,
it's just a full-time job, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what was the weight difference like between the babies when they're born?
Yeah, so actually pretty good. So Lenny was 2.6 kilos and Ted was 2.4.
Yeah.
So, only 200 grams or so.
And I have to ask before I forget, how was the recovery on your body, like in terms of any perineal tears? Like how do you feel your body's gone?
Yeah, amazingly well. I can't believe it, actually. I only had a graze. I didn't have any tears or anything too major. So, I've just been so lucky. I can't believe it. I think, they're both being smaller, I guess, than say Harry was, even though there was two of them, probably helped with that. But, I've so far had a pretty straightforward recovery.
Yeah, fantastic. So life with twins. Yeah. How's Harry coped? How has Harry found the introduction of twins into his life?
Yeah, amazingly well. That's another thing I've been taken aback by is, well, firstly, overnight, how much he's grown when you have new babies. You just come out of hospital, don't you, and go, oh my gosh, you're a teenager. But he had a little holiday with Nanny and Pa for the first week or so when we were in hospital, and then he's been entertained sort of ever since with grandparents and his half-sister, Layla, as well, keeping him very busy. But he's been amazing. I was worried about him, and you do feel, I know a lot of people warned me about this leading in, but you feel guilty for not spending the time with your toddler when you've got these newborn babies, and especially when there's two. So much of my time is spent on these babies. I'm really conscious of Harry and trying to devote time to him as well. But he's been amazing. He's very independent. He's, takes care of himself, keeps himself entertained, and then he's been really caring and loving towards the babies, which has been so great.
Give us just a couple of examples. What what do you think's helped with Harry? Like, have there been any little tips or tricks that you've done with Harry that you think have been helpful?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything. I think I'm not sure if it's anything we've done or he's just, I don't know. He's been amazing, but I think it has helped that there has been people around him to keep him busy. And I know that, my parents, grandparents, Layla, they've all been consistently around for Harry. So he probably hasn't, like he hasn't felt that he's missing us because he's just so busy and entertained, which has been amazing. That's the best thing. And even the neighbours, are so great. Like, oh, does Harry want to come over for a little play for a couple of hours and just keep him busy so that he's not sort of sitting around going, oh, mum and dad are always busy with the babies.
Yeah.
We do when we're at home, we try and keep things relatively consistent with him for his routine. He's been going to daycare back as he would have been, and we try and include him in things as well. He'll, when he hears the twins crying, like, he'll go over and say, it's okay, Harry's right here, and he'll get them a little blanket, and he feels involved in taking care.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. So 4 weeks. I'm amazed that you can even chat today. I thought I was pushing things a little bit, asking you to
thank God for grandparents, eh?
Is there anything else you would like to tell listeners? Like, what you've been through a crazy journey, and I'm sure life with twins, for any twin mums that are pregnant at the moment listening, like, is there anything you want to share, Jodes, to finish off?
Yeah, I think the biggest learning experience for me was probably around that vaginal delivery versus cesarean. Like, I know everyone's case is completely different, but I was quite shocked when the obstetrician had suggested that a vaginal birth was possible for me, and that was sort of what she was leaning towards. So I guess all I'd say is I know there's certain hospitals that are a lot more open to that than the multiple births than others. And I think that's why I did actually have a transfer in hospitals once I got to that 32-week mark, because of the fact that they were planning a vaginal birth for me, and my obstetrician knew that this hospital would be, a bit more supportive of that. But I guess I would just say, if it's possible, like, don't be scared by that. I know it's really daunting, and it's easy for me to say on this side of it because I was pretty daunted by the prospect of a vaginal birth for twins as well. But, for me, like, it couldn't have gone more smoothly, and I'm really glad that I went down that path now and trusted in the process that my body would know what to do. So I guess try not to be daunted by that if it's an option for you.
Yeah, great. And at the start, one of the first things you said when you found out you were pregnant, you mentioned you were thinking, how am I going to cope with twins? So Jodie, how are you coping with twins?
Well, so far it's one day at a time, and from 1 3-hour increment to the next, and we just get through. But I feel like at the moment we're lucky, we've got lots of help and lots of great support, and also for us knowing that these are our last babies. So we've decided we're not having any more, but just to remind ourselves, when it's really tough and you feel like this is never ending, and we're just reminding ourselves we'll never, my husband says we'll never hold another baby of ours this small ever again. So just try and, enjoy the moment, as rough it is as it might be at the time. But yeah, for us, I think that helps knowing that, this isn't going to happen again for us. So, try and take it all in. And then I'm sure I'm very aware that they're still so young. And once they, get a bit older and they've got more awake time, I'm sure things will get rougher again, and, there'll be lots of ups and downs. But I think just taking it a day at a time and, reminding yourself that it goes so fast. So try and enjoy it.
Like so many women I speak to, and I know I felt the same, when they know it's their last baby, it really does change the mindset of it all, doesn't it? Compared to your first, where, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think also because everyone says it goes so quickly, but with your first, you're there and you're in the moment, and it does seem to be a rough ride. then all of a sudden, you're 12 months down the track and you look back and you're like, God, that went quick. And so now with the second and third, it's like, no, this really will, that you'll blink and you'll miss it. So just try and embrace it for now.
And I find still with my third, you sort of every new stage, you sort of mourn the old stage. Like every time I go up a size in a onesie or, as mine started prep, like it doesn't matter. Like you still sort of mourn, this is the last time this will happen.
Yeah.
Have you had, final question, I'm just interested to know, because you've had so much beautiful support from your family and neighbours and everyone around you, have you had to do a night by yourself yet? Like put all three to bed solo?
Not yet. Not a night, no. A couple of days home from hospital, my husband realised that he had to be in Melbourne for a half day sort of in the morning, and that caught me by surprise because he forgot caught us both by surprise because he'd forgotten he'd booked this appointment. But I'd had like a day, sort of by myself with the toddler, the twins, and that was kind of a anxious, thought, how am I going to do this by myself? But it was actually fine. My toddler was amazing. He might have watched more TV that day than he would have otherwise, but hey, he was happy. He was fed. The twins were fed. It was all good, things were okay. So I haven't had to do a night yet. That'll be interesting. And also knowing this week my husband's back at work, that'll be an interesting time as well, even though like he's working from home, but I'm also conscious that, I can't just call on him. Like I need to let him sort of do his work, but it also is comforting to know that he's only just in the office if things, I really desperately need him for a minute or two.
I think what you said before is very relevant. Like often it's our thoughts that are worse than the actual. Like worrying about what might be coming up is worse than actual doing. And I love what you said about you just focusing on 3-hour increments at a time.
Yeah. The baby steps, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jodie, for sharing your beautiful story with little Lenny and Ted.
Nice to speak with you.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you for taking time out and we'll chat to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Kat.
Bye.
Bye.
And before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links at fitnessmama.com/podcast. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and I look forward to you joining me very soon for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at FitnessMama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.